Good morning. Anybody ever seen Amy Cuddy or watched her TED Talk? Look her up. It's fascinating. She's a behavioral psychologist, and she did some studies, and she found that blind people, born blind, thrust their arms up over their heads, fists are clenched, chin is slightly raised after accomplishing a significant physical feat. It's really extraordinary, and I always like to start my presentations off that have nothing to do with what I'm going to talk about, but I really encourage you, the next time you're going in to ask for an increased budget from your boss, you're going to the CEO's office, stand outside about 5 minutes early, walking back and forth like this. I'll guarantee you'll go in feeling like $1 million. So thank you all very much for being here. My name's Grant Asplund, and I'm going to just dive right in. Is it really that dangerous? Are these guys out looking for us? I think all you have to do is look at a few of the headlines that have come up just in the last few weeks. You know, terrorists in the machine. Now, what's fascinating to me about this whole trend with malware and malicious code, we all heard about the world's largest distributed denial of service attack, right, on Krebs. It is the perfect ingredients for the bad guys. But what's fascinating is if you go back when I had a full head of hair, malicious code was an inconvenience. Kind of jacked your machine up a little bit, you'd have to call IT, but that was it. And then the granddaddy of IoT cyber breaches taught us it can actually cause physical damage. I'm talking about Stuxnet, where these centrifuges spun erratically out of control and shattered all over the floor of the Iran nuclear facility. This was a first. I can cause physical damage to things with code. And we're just at the beginning of that. Well, now it's more. This came out on the 4th of October, Johnson & Johnson. Anybody wearing the Ping insulin pump right now? If you are, raise your hand. Tell me your IP address. You now could die because I could administer a lethal dose of insulin into you. We are in a different world, from an inconvenience to physical damage to now truly life and death. So don't think that it's not a threat. It's a serious threat. So I want to move to a couple of stories about a couple of women in my life. It's not about me, and yes, I'll be the first to admit I'm a lucky man. I married way up. I think, I asked if she had bad eyesight. It's like, no, just poor judgment. So my wife is a degreed professional, bright woman, ran retail for a very large healthcare network. I was the global evangelist for Blue Coat Systems for about 5 years. I traveled all the time. I've been with CENTRI now about 5.5 months. So I needed to get to the airport. My wife's car was in the shop. I was going to New York. I live in the Seattle area. And so she took me to the airport. Great, no problem. I'm in the passenger side. It's easier to just jump out curbside and go. And I remembered after I got out of the vehicle, I got a few-year-old Beamer and burns a little bit of oil, and my oil light came on. And I was walking and I realized, oh man, I got to get oil for my car. I forgot to get oil. So I get to New York. It's late in the day. I don't want my wife driving the vehicle all week without getting oil. I call her up, and she says, oh, hey, I already took care of it. What do you mean? And before I could say anything, she says, oh, no, I know you prefer Castrol. It's got to be full synthetic, 10W30. I got it for you. And I'm like, I'm impressed. I'm thinking, hey, this is awesome. So we go on with our conversation. Okay, I love you. And just before I hang up, she says, hey, when does the light go off? What light? Well, the oil light. I put the oil in the car, but the light is still on. Uh-oh. And then in about 3 minutes, I quickly determined the oil went into the radiator. Yeah, exactly. I'm in New York, my car, oil, and I'm like going, oh my God. Fortunately, I got a buddy that helped me out. What's my point here? My wife is a degreed professional, very bright, but just like all of us, we can't be experts in everything. And she's not a mechanic. So she had no malicious intent. She was just trying to get the job done, but she did it wrong. So the moral of the story is, when you're looking to secure your IoT, don't be hasty about it. Don't expect to be an expert in it, and don't expect to be able to be an expert overnight. Make sure you find people that can help you to really do it right. All right. Another woman in my life. This is back in the 50s and early 60s. My mom. Big job, because I've got 4 brothers. First 4 of us, no more than a year apart. And while she had a huge job taking care of us, my mom made, I think, the best spaghetti sauce I've ever had in my life. I mean, from scratch, mincing and cutting and chopping and simmering all day long. And the stuff was awesome. And in my family, we were pretty poor. She made a huge pot of that stuff, and that's what you had for dinner for about a week until it was gone. Just don't scrape the bottom because it's burnt by then. But she had the benefit of the time with the kitchen adjacent to chasing after us to do this. But everyone in the IoT space, we want to get that product out and on the market fast. And what do we do today? Pour it in. Now, every one of these have all the same ingredients that my mom used to use. Some of them maybe simmered even longer than my mom would simmer her sauce. Don't tell her, but some of these maybe even taste just as good as hers. So the moral of the story here is, don't try to figure out how to get all the right ingredients yourself. Look for finding ways that you can add water and shake, that you can pop off that lid, add that particular component. And in my example, what I'm talking about really is the security aspects of your IoT, because they are available, they're out there. So, just to give a selfless little rah-rah for who we are, we're CENTRI Technology, and we have done just that. Created a set of tools for developers to easily, quickly add advanced security to their applications, their programs, their things. And what most of us have been doing is largely using a technology that was created for the anonymous. Think about it. SSL, now oftenly referred to and known as TLS, it was designed so that you or me or my dog could buy a book from Amazon. But in order to figure out if it's you or me or my dog, I need to somehow make that communications, establish the communications, the handshake, subsequent agree on how we're going to encrypt, what level of encryption we're going to use. But it is that anonymity that introduces the potential risk, because I have to transfer, if I use SSL right out of the box, I have to transmit some bytes in the clear. And it is that clear transfer that lets me potentially step in and be the man in the middle. So you think you're talking to Amazon, but it's really me. Give me your credit card. I'll never send you the book. Thanks very much. Furthermore, it is a tunnel through which you are transmitting plain text. The data itself is not coming off of your device encrypted, unless you are an expert and you can go in and pick a particular cipher that you want to run inside of SSL to encrypt that data. But if a bad guy is successful anywhere along the way getting to the data, he or she is getting your data. And that's the problem. Furthermore, when I get all that data at rest, storing it. There is no open source equivalent. So I have to go buy what's called an HSM, hardware security module, from Vormetric or Gemalto. And a good friend of mine works for Gemalto. A 1 million key capacity HSM sells for $35,000, plus annual maintenance and subscription. So when we start talking about the amount of data that could come from all of these devices, people always think IoT, it's just a small amount of data, 5K by at a time. Well, every mountaintop is covered one snowflake at a time. Once on the back end, it becomes a huge amount of data, and you want it protected, because that's the prize. That's the prize. Ask Yahoo. The prize is getting to the data. So we think that there are some better alternatives. And how we do this, first and foremost, we're installed in the exact same place as SSL or TLS. What's different about us is that we're designed for the known, not for the unknown. And there's an easy, simple way to actually validate the hardware ID from that device so that the next time it connects, I compare and make sure it's the same device. Furthermore, when the data leaves my thing, it's encrypted. I've never transmitted or transferred a single byte in the clear. And what that means is, no matter where and if the bad guy or girl is successful, they're stealing a digital bag of sand because it's leaving the device encrypted. And lastly, one of our 8 patents includes the ability to have no vault required. So you can now store the data compressed and encrypted without the need for a vault. And that's the other thing. We operate in cache memory, not main memory. So what that means is it's going to be much faster, uses less power, generates less heat. And I'm not going to go through every one of these. The most important thing I guess I want to mention on this slide is, isn't it ironic? The most widely used encryption on the internet today is encryption we can't trust. Because 50% of the malware is going to be delivered via SSL, according to Gartner. Furthermore, large organizations as well as small are spending millions of dollars buying devices to be a legitimate man in the middle to crack open the SSL transmission to make sure that it's not carrying anything malicious. It's time for something new. So a couple of quick charts that just show the performance differences. I mentioned every snow-capped mountain gets that way one flake at a time. This is a customer that was collecting DNS data and was trying to aggregate it all back in a Hadoop cluster so they could do real-time analysis for DDoS warning. So you can understand the critical importance of how quick it needs to be. If I'm aggregating the data, but I'm 15 minutes after the DDoS attack starts, it's really a DDoS reporting system, not a warning system. And the problem they were having is they increased the number of simultaneous servers that are connecting and sending gigabytes of data using gzip and SFTP. The performance degraded severely. And when I got out to 20 simultaneous connections, I was at 1:17. When they got to 30, it was over 3 minutes. And it just continued to back up from there. So when you look at the open source tools, they're great, and they were great at a time, but I really think in the world of IoT, we've moved past it. And we need something that really performs more appropriately for the environments that we're building and making. This is just a looped request rate for continual requests. This is just compression, just gzip. We, in a single pass of the data, compress equivalent to that of gzip and encrypt using a stream cipher called the shrinking generator stream cipher. It came out of MIT in 1993. It has no known vulnerabilities today. So we're not rolling our own and just coming up with this with the dog collar in the garage. This is something that's been around for a while. But you can see after 125, I start throwing errors using open source. We got up well over to 750 before there were any errors. So kind of the summary, I don't want to go on too long. We'd love to have you stop by the booth. We can tell you all about what we do. The thing that's most significant, I guess I want to stress, is we are purpose-built for IoT. We're not technology that's just been rolled forward. Designed to run in cache memory. Our handshake is one round trip, 2 messages out of the box. Compress and encrypt. And no vault required.